Passcode has already been entered. You will be joined.
Not expecting the difficulty with the internet connection, so I apologize. But I'm glad to be here. As I've said on previous webinars, I really enjoy, I work a lot with DOI. I'm the main point of contact here at EAP for Department of Interior. And my, my direct, the COO here is also one of the main contacts. So we really, really enjoy working with you guys. I have a lot of respect for what you do. And so it's always a pleasure to, whether I'm consulting with a manager or working with an employee or doing a webinar, I very much enjoy it. A little bit about myself. I've been a clinician or therapist for approximately 9 years. I spent the last year and a half at EAP. Before that, I would see clients one-on-one, anywhere from 3 years old all the way up to, I think I have somebody in there right around 80 years old. So a vast array of ages and different life stages going on. So that brings me to why I like to talk about doing this webinar and planning for retirement. So if you have anything that you want to comment on, I'm going to ask anything that you'd like out of this training. Feel free to unmute your phone and contribute. That's fine if there's something you want to be addressed. So this training, this webinar is mostly going to be about emotionally preparing. Of course, there's always a financial component, but it's not a financial training. So it's just getting emotionally ready, you and your family getting ready for this next stage. And we're going to talk about, hopefully this will help you as you start to think about retirement. And it's completely normal to have hopes and dreams and expectations, but also concerns about what will happen next. So we're going to talk about that planning and preparation. So is there anything that comes to your mind of what you'd like addressed in this webinar while we're talking? So there's plenty of time, so feel free to share if there's anything on your mind. Okay, so we'll go and I'll ask again, so feel free to let me know. All right, so what are the goals of this training? Basically, it's a major transition in your life, and there's an emotional component to it, so we're going to start talking about what that piece is and how to cope with that if needed. You may not have all just extreme joy with this, and it may have some mixed feelings, and that's okay. So we're going to talk about those mixed feelings, and if you need to cope with those, how to do that. What are your attitudes about retirement? Some resources that might be helpful. And then talking about taking care of yourself, but also in terms of not only with the emotions, but your interest and what to do next. I think that's a lot of question of, you have that immediate plan, like maybe there's a trip you want to take, or you just want to rest, or you just want to kind of not have to be anywhere. But then after that, what happens? So, and then prioritizing what are your options, and then prioritizing those. So retirement, like I said, it's kind of, depending on where you are with it, it can be, for some of you, a very romantic view of, oh, this is the pinnacle, this is the what I've worked so hard for, and then after retirement I'm going to do whatever I want, but it's still kind of off in the distance. And then for some of you it might be a little bit closer and thinking, is this a reality for me? And then some of you may be even closer where it is a reality and you're just counting down the days. So, or you're dreading the countdown. You're like, wow, this is only this far out, and I don't know what I'm going to do. So there's mixed feelings, and these are, just to let you know, just to show you, these are the top 20 stressors in life. And on the bottom of the first column is retirement. This is one of the top 20 stressors. So stress can be a life change. It doesn't have to be a positive or a negative change. It could be any life change. So buying a house, getting married, having a child, learning that you're going to have a child, even if you've been wanting a child for a long time, learning that you're pregnant, all that could be very stressful because it's the what comes next, it's the unknown. Of course, we all know stressors can be negative. Death, accumulation of a lot of debt, financial stress, health changes in a family member. You know, that's obvious, but we don't always realize that positive things can also be very stressful to us. And it's a change, and that can cause stress. So it's okay, and people may not understand this with any stressor, that when you're going through something very positive, like you're retiring, they might not understand that you might have some negative feelings or some feelings you aren't comfortable with, because they're in a different place viewing it. They aren't in the same place as you are. So that's okay if you're a little concerned and people don't understand some of those feelings. So here's some facts about retirement. And if everybody could put their phone on mute, because I hear some jostling in the background. An average American retiree can expect 25 or more years in retirement due to our increased lifespan. So I think that is fabulous, that you have 25 plus years of enjoyment and retirement. Our modern day concept of retirement began because of a combination of increased lifespans and then the onset of government-sponsored retirement benefits, especially when Social Security was created. Can I just make sure everybody mutes their phone? Prior to such programs, Americans really worked their entire life for as long as their health allowed. And when they became unable to work, their family took care of them. And the baby boomers now is the generation that are retiring. And in 2011, the oldest members of the baby boom generation were celebrating their 65th birthday. And today, and every day for the next 19 years, 10,000 baby boomers are going to reach the age 65. So this is going to dramatically change the composition of the country. Currently, 13% of Americans are 65 and older. And then by 2030, it's going to be almost 20%. So it's a big population. So many people are going through this transition right now. This is a very common issue. It's a major life transition. And most of us have been working for the better part of our lives, and stopping that routine can take some getting used to. And of course, many people that are eligible for retirement may not retire at all. They're continuing to work full-time, or they're going to work part-time, or maybe they even begin their own business. And sometimes this is because of financial constraints, but sometimes it's because they've always wanted to do something, another business, but they never, it's kind of like you had to choose two paths. One was your career path that led you where you are now, and then the other one was a path you kind of had to put to the side, never got to explore. So why plan? I mean, isn't retirement just a nice little jaunt in the rolling grassy hills of freedom and total control over your life? Well, it actually is an adjustment. And when you plan, that adjustment will go much smoother for you. You're able to see all your options very, very clearly. You have more control over what will happen. So, and then you're open to also some opportunities that you may not have realized when you start to explore and start to plan. And then you also get prepared for the next phase of losing that, that part of your life that's a career and the work identity. And we're going to talk more about this, but particularly if you're a very mission-driven, or if you have always wanted to be whatever you are right now, that's a huge part of your identity. And so retirement, you know, essentially you don't have that identity every day. You might still find a way to use it, but you don't have it. It's not a main part of you. And so it is an adjustment to that. So retirement is something that happens to you. It's a day, your retirement day comes, you know, you have that particular set date if you're to that point. But the transition is the process. It's the getting ready, preparing, even from 15 years before retirement, something I think we all think about when we start working on some level. Even if you started working at 15 or 16, the idea in your mind was never that you would work until you could physically not work anymore, you know, for most people. And then as you get closer to that, it starts to become more and more of a reality and in the forefront. but from going up to retirement, the day of retirement, and then the time after that, 25 plus years after. It's a transition. And there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of challenges. There's downsizing. There's job shifts. There's recessions. We've all seen the economic crash and the stock market crash after 9/11. We've seen the housing bubble pop. We've seen, you know, all the kind of different fluctuations in the economy. And so getting kind of adaptive and resilient to those changes and doing the best you can with that. And a lot of that is mental preparation and having a plan. So there is, and there can be, so like I said, a lot of people have this, and rightly so, this wonderful view of retirement. It's, you know, I've known people that had countdown clocks on their desk, you know, for until the day they retire, and only to find that they retire and they go straight back to work, you know. But the difference is they're on their own time now. So, and it's this, you know, can't wait and this excitement. But don't be surprised if you experience a grief process. If you have gotten a lot of your self-worth, your self-esteem, and pleasure from work, you may find it difficult to adjust to retirement. It takes time and practice to take on a new role, and so this transition can cause a lot of tough questions. And so it might cause that grief. And what is your new identity going to be? What am I going to do now type thing. I personally am obviously I'm a counselor, and so I'm very mission driven, and I became a counselor for a personal mission. I like, and just FYI, it's because I like to empower people. I like to help them feel empowered. And so with that, to not be, it's part of who I am. So me being a counselor is a reflection of my personality, I guess, if that makes sense. And many of you may feel that way. You may be at heart a learner, and you love learning, and so you might be a researcher. Or you might be a leader at heart, and now you're a supervisor, something like that. So it's a huge part of who you are. So you can have a grief process of who you are. The other grief processes you can have are the loss of relationships, the loss of time management, schedules, but what are you gaining? And so somebody tell me here what you gain with retirement. What just stands out for you?
Freedom.
Freedom. Freedom with like your own time, or
yes.
freedom,
yes.
your own
freedom
time? You get to be where you want to be?
Freedom to schedule my own time.
Mm-hmm.
Less stress.
Yes. You're gaining a less stressful lifestyle. Oh, and that, less deadlines, less obligations. Anything else? So for those of you getting close to it or thinking about it seriously, what are you going to miss?
Camaraderie.
Yes. Nobody knows your job like you and your coworkers do. It's just not the same, at least in my field. I can't go home and talk to my spouse. Well, I can't go home and talk to him about what I do anyway, but he doesn't understand, you know, if there's a difficult situation or if there's multiple crises that I'm dealing with. He doesn't understand what it's like to do that because he doesn't do that. So that camaraderie is very important. And if you have a project, people that aren't in the project may not understand it quite the same, or in your agency. Anything else you guys will miss?
I think initially I might miss some of the structure of a work day.
Mm-hmm. So the schedule and the plan. Okay, anything else? Those are really good contributions, so thank you for sharing. So when you're making that decision, obviously financial security is number one, right? Is it possible? Is it even feasible to retire? You got to look at health. What are your responsibilities? Are you caring for children? Are you caring for grandchildren? Are you caring for elderly people or a sibling? You know, a lot of times, myself included, I have power of attorney over a sibling who is not fully functioning. So you might have a sibling with Down syndrome or something like that that you might have to think about when it comes to how's that going to look in retirement. And then also your partner, your spouse, when are they retiring? Is it going to work? And then it goes back to looking again at financial security, health status, family responsibilities, the timing of the retirement, what's that going to be like? So those are things to consider. But here's some things when you're planning and thinking about things to consider. These are some of the things that come up as stressors. So sometimes people, and you guys may not be in this boat, but sometimes people plan on selling their home as an income during retirement. They paid off their home and now that's going to pay for them. And will that work for the next 25 plus years? You know, how is that going to impact you? Keeping your house, selling your house, this is when you need to consult with an expert. Also, what are your insurance needs? There's sometimes that brings us to, can you count on Social Security and Medicare? And I know for a lot of people, Social Security and Medicare is like a maze. It's just very confusing, and understanding that process and how do we know what we're going to need and what we're going to get and the process, and so we can plan around that. How stable are your employee benefits? I hope that they're really stable, but I don't know anything about employment benefits through DOI personally, so that might be something for some people that's a concern. It might not be so much for DOI. And then the stability of your current job, being in that job until you can retire. And then there is a technology. Sometimes when you're in the workplace, you're almost forced to keep up with technology. But if you're not a real technology-driven person, it can get overwhelming about after retiring. You know, I'm going to have to go through this website and this portal to get this Medicare and this kind of thing. So I don't think that's the case for you guys, but sometimes that might be a little bit of a concern about technology playing a role in the advances in technology. Some people, though, are all on top of it. It doesn't matter if they're 95 or 15. They know all the ins and outs of technology. They're the first ones getting the new iPhone. They're the first one getting the new tablet, whatever. So it just kind of depends on your personality. But sometimes technology does kind of worry people. So these are some stressors when you think about retirement. What about you guys? Is there anything that stresses you out as you think about it?
The uncertainty of our financial situation. That's a bit of a
okay.
stressor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know for me it's just whether or not, for example, Social Security will be there for the three-legged stool for the first people. The way things are going, you just can't depend on that. If not, you got to plan to work longer so that your other two legs provide enough.
Right. And that's true because Social Security is, on average, 1/3 of people's retirement income. On average. It's more for lower income people and less for higher income. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's exactly that third leg. And is it going to be there? And can I rely on that? And do I have a backup plan? You know?
I have an issue, excuse me, because I'm a widow and I'm by myself and I'm used to being around people all day long. I won't have that after I retire.
Okay, that's a good point. Well, you won't have the people you have now after you retire, but we're going to talk about some things you can do because that social investment, we are social beings, and whether you need a lot of time with somebody and you thrive on that social investment, or you just need a little touch every now and then, you know, as far as like maybe I just need to go out and be with one friend for lunch this week and that's enough for me. Everybody's different on what kind of contact or social engagement they might need, but you're right. It's going to change, and that's going to be what happens next. That how am I going to be around all those people? And it probably feels very lonely at this point. So we're going to talk about ways to deal with that as well.
I think one of my stressors is I hear about what a huge backlog there is on processing retirement claims, and I wonder personally about giving up my income from my job and then how to survive until they get that your retirement figured out.
Mm-hmm. And who does that go through for you guys?
Through OPM, I guess, but it basically comes back to our agency.
Yeah.
But that's kind of scary, is how long it's going to take that to kick through. You know, you read about all the backlogs on processing retirement claims, and that's pretty huge.
Yeah, it is. It's very huge.
It is. This is Joy Bueller. I'm actually, in addition to being the EAP program coordinator, I'm not the retirement point of contact, but I handle FEHB, so I'm quite familiar with that. And the backlog, each of the bureaus will be working with you. Your retirement office will be working with you, and the backlog has been dramatically reduced. So even though there is some, OPM has been working very hard to reduce that backlog. So that's one less thing to worry about.
Good, good. Anything else?
Hi. My biggest stressor is the fact that I'm not having to return back to my home state, whereas I've been on the East Coast for the last 24 years, and then having to go back to a small area that doesn't offer a lot of activities, such as going to a play or musical or things of that nature, and then also taking into consideration that if you want to see the doctor, I can just simply call up the doctor and make an appointment, or if there are cancellations. But also, returning to a small town, you have to look at the medical aspect, because some specialist doctors won't come in, won't have an office. They'll either come into your area Mondays and Wednesdays or Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that has been a big a stressor for me.
Right, right. So not only social but medical, and are you going to get the medical care that you need when you need it?
Right.
And getting there, and is transportation an issue as well?
Yes, because in this particular small area, it's very small. It's about 15,000 people. I'm still blessed that my parents are there, and they're in their 90s. But I also have to think about their care and you know, little things that we take for granted, whereas there's no public transportation. If I need to get my car serviced, I either have to go to the next largest a city. So, you know, everything is not right there.
Right, right. So, and so that's a whole culture change for you, because you're going from a metro area, it sounds like, to a more rural area. So that's a different culture in itself, but you've been in this metro area, even though you might have been there before, you might have even been raised there, you've been back here for, what did you say, 24 years?
Yes.
So that's going to be a big adjustment as well. So there's a couple of resources I want to throw out at you guys. Is one, we do have financial planning. They're not going to know, I'll tell you up front, they're not going to know the ins and outs of your particular plan. But as far as financial planning, navigating, call EAP. You get a financial consult. It's 30 minutes over the phone, and they can direct you in an area to help you look at a way to look at your planning and your budgeting and that kind of thing. The other thing is you guys get work life, and so part of that, and this is very appropriate for the lady that just spoke on the phone, so thank you for sharing. Well, thank you for everybody for sharing, but if you are caring for loved ones, we have an elder care, a geriatric care manager. And I would actually, if you're thinking about Medicare and trying to plan that in Social Security, I would call them for that as well, just because they know the ins and outs. But you can get resources for seniors in areas. They have a nationwide resource list or nationwide resources from everything from starting the process to caring for your loved ones, working with Medicare, Social Security, all the way to if your loved ones need nursing home, that kind of thing. But what I'm thinking is if you're trying to navigate, you at least have somebody to kind of talk to about it. So you could say that you could call us and say you need to talk to an elder care professional, and it doesn't have to be for you, or you may not feel like, well, what are you talking about? I'm not elderly. I don't mean to put more years on you than you may have earned, but they do know about that Medicare process as well. But also senior communities and how to get in touch with other people through your area and how you can have that social network. Okay. So the best things about retirement, you guys kind of told me a little bit about what you're going to gain. So a survey showed the top 3 answers that people thought were the best and I think we mentioned this before, was control over your time, the opportunity to relax when you want to relax, you know, the removal of those pressures of deadlines. And then several people wanted to reinvent their life, which I think is fabulous. I think it's what a great way to start the next phase. What about for you guys? Is there anything hasn't been said that you feel is the best part of retirement?
It will give me more time to be active in my church and other things that I've been wanting to do that I couldn't do because I was working.
Yes, yes. That's great. I think one person on the last call said not commuting. So if you live in a metro area and not having to deal with that commute, in certain areas, I know California's difficult, DC's horrendous, Atlanta's no fun either, but if you're in that area where the commutes are hours, hour and a half, you know, something like that, even if it's just you know, I know for me, I work 10 miles from work and it still takes me 45 minutes to get here, which may be nothing for you guys, but, you know, it's just even not to have that pressure of being somewhere at a certain time, you know, being able to kind of hang out in your pajamas for a little bit longer than you normally would, that kind of thing. Anything that you guys want to add?
Getting back to that commute, I do in New Mexico 127 miles a day. So that gets into about a little over 2 hours every day. So when you've been doing it for almost 24 years, it
kind of adds on, it kind of builds up, doesn't it?
It sure does. It sure does. So
oh goodness.
Not having to get up at 3:30 to catch a bus at 5 to come in to put a 9-hour day and then go back. That's, you know, that's going to be a big plus, I think. I'm looking forward to that anyway.
Yeah, you're going to have a long nap after you retire.
Yeah, and for a couple of years. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. You're not going to go anywhere.
No, no, I don't want to.
Another person had said more time with family. You know, her family may not live nearby, and now you have time to go visit them for, you could, you know, you don't have to do it according to your vacation schedule. You know, if you want to go for 3 days or you want to go for 3 weeks, you can determine what's feasible for you and how much time you want to spend with your family. But, you know, I thought that was a great idea. And a lot of times I'm very thankful for the retired people in my life that want to spend time with the grandchildren, you know, and so it's kept my child out of daycare, and it's just fabulous because I know how they're raising my child, or how they're watching my child. And so that for that person creates a lot of meaning in their life to be able to do that. So just whatever that means, but spending more time with your friends, your family, or how you want to. Anything else? So this is great. So you guys have some ideas about.
I think
go ahead.
spending time thinking about reinventing yourself. You know, what strengths do you have? What interests do you have? What's out there in the other side of the world where you can tap into that? And I don't know about other people, but I feel very blessed with the job that I have. It's very challenging. I learn new things every single day. I get to interact with a lot of professional people. My coworkers are terrific. But, you get to a point where you're ready to do something different, and I feel that I'm ready. I want to give back. So I want to give back to the world things that I've acquired here at work, and that goes into talents and interests and abilities that I have that I might be able to share with other folks. I was a teacher before I started working for the government, so I'd like to get back into that and maybe help educate the immigrants that are coming from different countries, especially in the Hispanic population, and teach them how to speak English, how to communicate in very basic terms that right now they don't have that. So that would be great.
Perfect. So that's great, and that's finding meaning in your next phase. And I think anytime you can find meaning in whatever you do, it makes that transition that much easier. And that much more valuable, and then it makes, and finding meaning also actually is one of the keys to having that happier life, is knowing you have a purpose. And maybe it's something, many of us had to kind of choose. When you work in a certain role, it gets very focused, and your training is all around that one role. And while that role may feel very varied in the fact that you're supervising, you're learning about these different aspects, it's still kind of focused on overall that one role. So it's not like you can be a biologist for fish and wildlife and then go and do photography. Well, maybe you can. Maybe that's a bad example. Or go and do teaching elementary age students as well as go and doing financial planning at your church, something like that. So you can always do that, but you can't dedicate the amount of time to the other interest as you would to being strictly, as you have to your job, because your job takes 8 to 10 hours a day. So yeah, reinventing yourself, finding what interests you, what are your hobbies, and thinking about that now. And we're going to talk more about that in a second. So these are some different positive aspects that we've all talked about. And even just, maybe you want to take up tennis. You've always, you've wanted to play tennis, but you're just too tired on the weekends because you're working or whatever. Or maybe there's another outdoor, you'd like to hike more. You'd like to, for those of you living in New Mexico, going in the canyons, and hiking through that or whatever, getting outdoors, traveling, contributing to a cause. Maybe it's through your church. Maybe there's a children's hospital nearby, and you've always wanted to do more and be physically available and volunteer and give back that way. You're a part of a new community. You're going to have a new group of peers. You're going to have the time to invest in those social, because even though you have the camaraderie at work, you invest by default. It's not that, because your main focus is the job, And you guys may go out to eat afterwards and stuff like that, and you meet them, and it's an easy way to have peers because you're all working together. But you can't really say, hey, let's go take a 3-hour lunch, I'm assuming. Things like that. Go visit somebody. I have a friend in lives in China. So I can't really go visit her because I don't have the kind of vacation time I need right now, especially in the holidays, to go spend the time with her. You know, but if I didn't have work, then I might be able to do that. And we talked about the rush hour and the wake-up times and more control. The hardest things. I think in this survey, these are the top 3 responses: health insurance, and we talked about that. Is it going to be enough? Is it going to be what I need? What is my health going to be like? That is something we have to consider. My income, are those 3 legs going to support me how I need to? Am I going to have to change my lifestyle? Do I have to change my lifestyle in a way that is feasible? Maybe, you know, changing your lifestyle is one thing, but is it even feasible and manageable? And then, like you guys talked about, the loss of camaraderie. So those are the top 3 hardest. Sometimes questioning, you know, like I said, the maintaining the standard of living. We talked about the availability of Social Security, the inflation of the U.S. dollar. We've been, like I said, we've been through a lot of ups and downs with our economy, and a lot of us lost a lot of money after the market crash. And so just little concerns about what's going to happen, the unknown. Some people will worry about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, talk about the loss of income. There's something fairly new, and maybe you touched on this because I stepped off the phone for just a second there, but you know, we're doing, some of the agencies of DOI are now doing the phased retirement, where they're bringing that in. Do you have a separate training on that, or is that something that you might touch on today?
Well, I think Joy might be a better resource for that. Joy, are you on right now?
I am. What was the question again?
Well, it was about the phased. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just say that some of the agencies within DOI are offering phased retirement, and I was curious if there may be a separate training session on that we can talk about that to learn more about it. I've read about it, but there's still some questions that remain unanswered.
Yeah, we're actually currently, I mean, I'm not the retirement point of contact, but it's my coworker, and I believe that there will be some training as they go forth and implement the program. Okay. So the program hasn't been implemented to my knowledge, but they're working on that. And yes, there will be some training involved that. I believe that there will be some.
Okay, I'll just wait for that then. Thanks.
Okay.
That's a great question. Because sometimes people worry about when they retire, they'd like to have a little nest egg for their children as a legacy, or to will to them once they pass. So that's something that might be a worry for some. And then another worry could be taxes on income, or paying, if you have a child and you're retiring and your child's in college, you might have a concern about how you're going to pay for your children's education, or if you're caring for a loved one, like we talked about a little bit, a parent or a sibling, and doing that in retirement. How is that going to work? How is that going to play out for you? Is there anything else that I did not mention, or that you guys haven't already said? Okay. So there is a little bit of a downside sometimes of retirement. And what we talked about is the loss of identity. So you have your role there, you've been there for 20, 30, 40 years, and it's who you are. And now that role is going to change. You might take part of that role with you. If you're a learner, you might always still be learning. If you're a supervisor and you teach and you train, you might still be teaching in some other component, but this role specifically is going to change. It's not uncommon. I think that we're socialized. Women and men are socialized differently, but I do think that particularly with men, it may be difficult because I think men are, for the most part, and not everybody's this way, but they're socialized to be the main income earner. They're socialized in general to be a working, productive man, I guess. And so having that socialization for 65 years And then now there's not that identity, even though you've totally, completely earned your retirement. And it's still an adjustment. So it may not be as difficult as an adjustment for some, but if you have the question of who am I now or what is my worth now, don't be surprised if that comes up. And it may be fleeting, and hopefully you move through it and say, you know, I've earned this, and this is my time to do what I want to do and enjoy my time, and that's fine. But I think men generally have a very difficult time with that identity. I do think women that are very career-focused also have the same problem, or same concerns, I guess I should say. So I don't want to dismiss that. But I've just seen it more so with men. We talked about the loss of relationships, the loss in your camaraderie with your coworkers, people that understand what it's like to go through what you go through every day and to do the work that you do every day. And you might have this loss of control and loss of competence and confusion, because if you don't have a schedule and you don't have what you feel is a purpose, then you may not know what to do with your time, and you may not feel like you have any usefulness. And so, you know, obviously this can cause some depression and some anxiety. So this doesn't have to be, there doesn't have to be a downside, but I want you to be prepared, because hopefully your retirement, when it comes, you've got this plan and you're just enjoying and loving every second of it. And if you do the phased out retirement, you're getting ready and you're slowly graduating into the full retirement, and you're completely, but I don't want you to feel abnormal if you're like, why am I having such a hard time when I've been looking forward to this for so long? So there's actually 6 stages. I'm going to add another one in the 7th, but these are the different stages of retirement. And there's kind of a joke in therapy world that there's a stage for everything. So everything has stages, but I think this is very appropriate and very accurate personally. But if you guys disagree, feel free to tell me. So you've got that imagination stage, 6 to 15 years before. So you're still pretty far out from retirement. I mean, it's getting closer if you're 6 years, but it's not like you couldn't have a lot of movement in your job or, you know, things like that. So it's about, let's just say about 10 years. You start imagining retirement, but it may not be a top priority. Maybe at that point you do have children in college. You're kind of focusing on that. You're focusing on your parents. You start thinking about it, start planning, making sure your finances are, you're putting away or getting what you need so that you can plan financially for it. Then you start thinking about how and when you might want to retire. A little closer, 3 to 5 years, you start to hesitate a little bit. If you're more clearly visualizing it and you're kind of questioning your preparedness, you might feel some economic stress, some uncertainty about, is this really going to happen? This is a really good time to start kind of really seeking financial advice is always good, no matter if you're 20 or 55. But usually people at this stage kind of get more advice financially. And then you're real close to it. You're two years to right up to the day of it. You're getting really excited, preparing, looking forward to it. And then you have retirement day, liberation. You're free. And then 1 year after, you're just, you know, hopefully in this euphoria of the freedom, you know, you've gotten the, hopefully you're financially where you expected, things are going as expected, and you're feeling great, and you have that first year to just do whatever you want, and you're feeling empowered and adventurous. You're exploring all kinds of different options. However, if you have that financial stress, it could be a very stressful time too. It could be a lot of questioning yourself, that kind of thing. So sometimes that financial stress can really deflate the euphoria, as you can probably imagine. Then there's kind of this reorientation. However, I think before that, I think there's a level of disenchantment, because I think when we go through different life stages, or when we set goalposts for happiness, I'll be happy when, is kind of what we're kind of socialized to say. And so I think it's much like if you got married. I'll be happy when I get, well, maybe that's a bad example, but you get married, you think about the wedding day. You don't necessarily plan what the next year or two are going to be like. And then you think about when you're going to have children, but you don't necessarily plan that first, you know, you might plan who's going to take care of the baby and if the baby's going to go to daycare and things like that. but you don't really think about the ins and outs of the next day, the next week. You know, it's about the birth of the baby is how most people are. Some of us are more planners and we plan everything out, but just like retirement, I think we look forward to that day, but we don't have a plan for the next day. We just kind of say, well, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm just going to wake up when I want and do what I want. And that might work for the first year, but then you kind of are like, well, is this what it is? Is this what there is to it? So there might be a level of disenchantment. It's kind of like, in my mind, when after you get married and you realize that that honeymoon period is kind of over, and not in a bad way, but you're getting more into like your normal relationship. And as any relationship, there's growing periods. And you have that first argument, and it's like, oh, okay. So there's an adjustment. You still love the person just as much, but it's just an adjustment to that next phase. So I think there sometimes can be a disenchantment with, oh, is this what this is all about? And then you have, so then the reorientation, you're starting to adjust, you're finding ways to manage any early feelings of disappointment, like we just talked about, and you're getting your comforting routines, and you have adjusted your goals, you set new goals, like we said, the retirement was that goalpost, you set a new goalpost after retirement, and your happiness starts to increase. And then reconciliation, this is just getting older, this is seeing your friends get older, having more, maybe possibly dealing with more physical issues. Many people continue to feel happy during this phase, so I don't want to be negative about it, but you can experience some depression or anxiety during this time. So when you're thinking about retirement, think about how you've handled other big life events and like getting married, entering college, having a baby, if you've had to go through a divorce, or if you've had a death or purchased a home. And remember how it takes time to adjust to those different phases. And knowing that you may respond to the same way. Some of us really thrive off of change, but most people really don't. It's really uncomfortable and not knowing, so having that plan to go into it. So these are all some kind of, and then how well do you understand your finances? How is it going to affect your relationships? So remember, if you are of retirement age and your spouse is of retirement age, your relationship may change a little bit because you've kind of, you've gotten used to, especially if you don't work together, then you've gotten used to, or any relationship that you have, if it's like a friendship or whatever, you've had this time limited or this limited time with them. And so now you have a lot more time, and if your relationships are such that you're used to spending a limited time, having more time may take an adjustment. So just to be aware of that. And what about your relationships with your coworkers? What about the people you see every day that you're not going to see so much? So you might want to make a plan to see them or to keep in touch with them somehow, whatever's convenient for you guys. And then we talked a lot about this earlier. One of you were talking about meaning in your life, and that's so true. That's one of the main things in being happy is, do you find that you have now in this phase of your life, you have purpose, you have a meaning? Is there something that brings joy and value to what you're doing? And that provides some sort of worth or meaning to you and how you're spending your time. And then dealing with that unstructured time. So now you've got this free schedule, and one of you mentioned that, like not having that schedule and not having that, it's kind of safe. And we do this as little children too. Little children, if you have children, you might know this, but they don't do well when there's not a structure in place. They want structure, and they get used to the structure. So if you do put a structure in place, they'll start to tell you, it's dinner time, where's dinner, or it's lunchtime, and they go to bed, hopefully that's where they get. But I think we enjoy that as adults too. And so having that new structure, so at the end of the day, you're not feeling like, I don't think I did anything today. I don't think I got anything done, and the days are just passing. And then taking care of yourself. Are you going to, you have more time now, is fitness and nutrition and self-care in there. It's a really good part of it, and it's a good way, again, it's a key component to happiness, actually, and a stress reducer to help you take care of yourself. So when you're planning for it, talk to others about how you're feeling. Find somebody. So whether it's your spouse, whether it's your best friend, or maybe it's somebody that with EAP, you call EAP, we get you set up with a private counselor, and you just kind of check in with somebody. So, you know, I'm surprised by this feeling I have, and I want to talk to somebody about it. Or you call EAP and talk to us. We're here 24/7, so you don't really want to get an appointment. You just want to talk to a professional. You can call us. We're all licensed counselors. But the other thing is, but talk about it. Get it out, because actually talking will help you process. And it'll put it out there, and sometimes hearing yourself say things helps you process. Think about what you're passionate about and how you're going to redefine yourself. So what that means is reinventing, but do it before you retire. Think about now, if retirement's on the horizon, or even if it's not, what do you want to do at that point? So you're already having a plan. Make a list of all the things you're interested in. Some, I believe, and I might be incorrect, but I believe you can actually even get free education after a certain age. And so do you want to go back to school? Do you want to get a certification? Do you want to, I've talked to people that want to start their own businesses, encouraging people in their community with financial planning, or they, like the woman said today, teaching, you know, going or being involved in the church. Is there something that you have loved doing, you used to do, but you kind of chose this path that you also love, but now you can go back to that? You've invested in this path, and now you can invest in another path. Doing a side business, a from-home business, something like that, doing crafts, doing, maybe there's multiple things. Maybe it's you want to do all kinds of different things, and you go through phases and you find a different interest as it comes up and do that. But having it planned out before. And start filling your calendar. Start looking at your calendar and putting what's reasonable for you. But if it's in the first 3 months, I want to do this, or I want to take guitar lessons every Thursday, or I want to do this week, I want to look into traveling because I've always wanted to travel, and this is where I want to go, and I want to start looking and planning. But to have a plan for you so you know what to do, you can always cancel it. You don't have to do it at all. And you can always cancel it. So go ahead and do that. I think a lot of time, particularly for women, we kind of leave out the me time. And again, I'm going to go into the socialization. If you are female and you've been socialized to be a caregiver, you know, and you probably know who you are, but you're the one everybody goes to. Make sure in retirement that you make time for yourself, because when you have more time, people might come to you more often. And so if that's your nature, that's a fabulous characteristic, I have to say, because I'm one myself. And it's very helpful, and it's very rewarding for the caregiver themselves to give back and do that. But also make sure you have time for you and what you want to do, particularly if you're going to be taking care of an elderly loved one. Then it's really important to make sure you have time for yourself. Also, start talking to your spouse now. Make sure your expectations are the same. Make sure everybody's on the same page. So if you have someone who, if you and your spouse are both retiring, or you have a spouse that's already at home, or, you know, the roles are changing. So are they expecting you to spend every minute with them while you're expecting to start a side business? Do they know that? Do they know what that means? Do they know how much time you will be spending together? Are they expecting to travel because now you're finally not tied to a work schedule and you're expecting just to stay home and relax? You know, plan it out. And then it might get tough, and so you might just have to kind of power through it sometimes to get to where you want to be and finding your new you, and that's okay. I am big into faking it till you make it, because it really actually works. Okay, if you need to. Retirement, don't minimize the transition that's going to be happening. And it's a big transition. And hopefully a very positive one. But don't make any major decisions until you've fully adjusted to this one transition. Always explore your options. And then like we talked about, you have this unstructured time. So how are you going to manage it? What do you want to do with your time? You don't have to overload yourself. You know, you could do one thing a day, one planned thing a week. You may be working nonstop till the day you retire. You might need a nap, or you're commuting 2 hours a day or 4 hours a day or whatever. And so you might need some time just to relax and not have to be anywhere. That's okay, because you're still doing something. You're taking care of yourself. But spend your time how you want to. When you're planning, you do have to, unfortunately, look at health issues. Any changes in your health that might affect you during this retirement. Is your housing up to that? This is a house, you know, you have 25 plus years of retirement, so is this the house that is going to suit you for this? Are there any losses or that you have? Are you fearing anything with this? And what can you do to prepare for that? And so that's when talking about it is really helpful, because sometimes your fears may be completely 100% valid. Other times they may just be your own head thinking too much, which I've been known to do, so I'm not faulting anybody for that. And then how's your partner's health? So if you have a partner or spouse, then how's their health and how's that going to play into it? I've talked about this a bit, but again, retirement can affect your relationship. So we talked about being married, but also if you're single, you might wonder about having a connection with other people, and how are you going to reach out? You've got your people at work, so what are you going to do now? That's when finding those activities, finding meaning, finding that time that you're going to spend, whether you volunteer, whether you join a senior community as far as not living, but like activities, or whether you get involved in some sort of community, whether it's church or a local hospital, you know, something like that where you can volunteer a small nonprofit. Usually in every community you can find something like that. And with technology, you can even coordinate and start groups, things like that. There's a Facebook group for everything, so if you're not on Facebook, but there's book groups, there's groups of therapists, there's groups of teachers, there's groups of, there's got to be groups of retirees, there's groups of, you know, within the community. So explore your options. If you need some ideas, give us a call. But see, and then that's another reason to call call EAP and get the work life. It's what we call it, but the elder care, but really elder care meaning like over, what, 55. So, you know, it's for quite a vast array. But finding senior groups or senior communities in the area, even if you're in a small rural area. But making sure you maintain contact with others, and you will develop new relationships, and it might take a little bit of effort, but it's going to be you getting yourself out there and finding interest. But if you find something you love to do and an interest that you love and a passion, the social connections will come with that. Unless, of course, your passion is completely being alone and not socializing with anybody. So, like we talked about, change is difficult. It's important to make your plan, stick with it, okay? And you can adjust it, but stick with it for the most part. Be flexible, be positive. You may decide that you're going to start a new business, and you may have people that are completely supportive, love the idea, and then you might have the naysayers. Like, why are you going to do that? You work so hard to retire. Just relax. Why are you going to, you just want to keep working? Thank them for their concern, and then protect yourself. Put up that boundary of, they just don't get it. They're not in the same phase. They're not who I am. They don't understand what I'm feeling. So that's okay. I'm just going to go and do what I want to do and give it a shot. And if I like it, I'll keep doing it. If I don't, I can always do something else. So you have that protection for yourself, because some people, you're always going to run into naysayers no matter what. you'll run into it when you say, I'm going to retire, and then I wish I could retire, I can't retire, blah, blah, blah. You know, you always run into some sort of negativity, and that's okay because people are all in different phases. But don't let that bring you down, and protect yourself from that. So these are some options we talked about: volunteering, traveling, going back to school, your own business, working part-time, or continuing to work if you're going to phase through your retirement. And here's some resources for volunteer opportunities. And Joy will get this PowerPoint to you guys. And here's some additional resources that you will have in the PowerPoint. And finally, if you guys get 6 sessions, so if you are having an adjustment issue to this and having some real anxiety, or if your spouse is, or if your partner, or if your children, well, they'd have to be a certain age, but call EAP and we'll get you set up. You get up to 6 sessions at no cost to you, completely confidential. We'll set you up with a private counselor in your community, whether it's near your home or near your work. And it's just like the counselor you'd use on your insurance panels. And so we'll get you set up, and then you can go and talk to them. You can always call EAP 24/7. You can also go to our website that talks about these, you know, like little articles on transitioning through retirement at eapconsultants.com. And your password is interior EAP. So we try to keep it simple, but it's interior EAP, all lowercase. So does anybody have anything they want to add or any questions?
Yeah, a couple of times I've heard you say call EAP, you get work life. I'm not familiar with what that is. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I'm sorry. That's my EAP lingo, so thank you for telling me. Basically, that's one of the benefits that you guys get. So we have, usually people know us as counseling, you know, getting a counselor. Work life is things that might affect that balance. And so we've got, that would include referrals for elder care, referrals for if somebody was adopting, anything to do with adoption, referrals for tutors and academic support. If you thought about going back to school, you could get referrals for that. You could get referrals for pet care. If you want to buy a pet, you know, go to a breeder, find a breeder, locate a kennel, locate a groomer, that kind of thing. And then we also have the legal consultations, and we have financial consultations. And all this is at the referrals are simply that, they're referrals. So it's elder care, adoption, academic, all that's referrals. But the legal consultation, you get a free 30-minute legal consultation with a lawyer in your area, and then a free 30-minute telephonic financial consultation. And they'll connect you up with services if you need additional after that. So that's what I meant by work life.
I appreciate it.
No problem. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you, and feel free to contact us if you need us. And I appreciate the work that you guys do and for being on the call.
I have one question.
Thank you.
Yes.
And that is, you're talking about calling EAP to help you work through retirement, but it's we only get EAP while we're actually employed by the department, right? I mean, we don't.
It's full-time and part-time employees, and then spouses and dependents.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
It's not, they just